Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to House Bill 357. This is relating to the single-use checkout bag. First up, Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Okay, we'll allow the testifiers to clear out, and if there's anyone outside who wants to testify on House Bill 357, you should come in right now. Okay, so Office of Hawaiian Affairs, okay, Department of Land and Natural Resources.
Madam Chair, committee members, my name is Esther Kia Aina for the Department of Land and Natural Resources. The department strongly supports this measure, and we stand on our testimony. Just 2 points. First, we just want to make clear that this is the finding a long-term funding solution to protect our watersheds is the department's #1 priority. It is also a priority for the Abercrombie administration. Second, we are very grateful for the committee's consideration of today's bill. We also have another bill, HB357, which increases the conveyance tax for 2% of property owners, which will affect properties for $2 million and above. The bill that we have before you today seeks to modify both consumer behavior in promoting recycling of bags, as well as providing revenue generation for the watershed program. And the conveyance tax, of course, provides revenue generation. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Department of Health.
Chair, Department of Health, stand on our testimony and strong support of this measure. Be available for any questions you may.
Instead of going through the testimony, which is fairly long, is there any other departments who want to testify on this bill? If not, any other testifiers? Mr. Kalapa.
Madam Chair, Vice Chairs, and committee members, as has been briefly pointed out, this is the new fee on single-use checkout bags, and right now it's at 10 cents and increases to 25 cents on January 1st, 2017. We remind you that all 4 counties by 2014 will ban plastic checkout bags. This bill will apply to all checkout bags, plastic, paper, whatnot. We think that, much like the beverage container fee, this is a matter of changing habits. It should not be a resource to generate money for a public program. It is rather surprising that if watersheds are indeed such a high priority for our state administration, that money is not appropriated out of the general fund. That's what the general fund is there for. It is to set priorities for our tax dollars that we give you, we give state government, and to find a new way to raise more money, I think, is really an insult to the consumer taxpayer, because I think we're already of the belief that we have given enough at the office, so to speak. We just think that you're going to set this program up and it's going to be so successful, you're going to have a whole infrastructure, and it's not going to generate the kind of money you think it's going to generate. And this is going to be another one of those fiascos, much like the beverage container program. So we really do advise against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other testifiers? Yes, please come up.
Hi, my name is Stuart Coleman, and I'm the Hawaii coordinator of the Surfrider Foundation. And just wanted to respond to the previous testimony. This is not a tax. This is a fee, an offset fee, and there is a pretty profound difference. We're not asking. This is designed to fail, if you will. It's not going to create a bureaucracy and an infrastructure. It's to change behavior, but also protect something that these bags spoil, our watersheds. And without going into all the testimony, because I think you've read plenty about the environmental effects of plastic bags and on marine creatures and such. But I think the important thing is remember that we're trying to change behavior and help fund a very valuable program that needs the funding. And when we mentioned the bottle bill, that has been a huge, huge success. And even though this is slightly different, Hawaii is one of the leaders in the country in recycling, and it went from recycling when it comes to bottles from very, very low, like 25%, to over 70, close to 80% once we enacted this policy. So we're trying to do the same thing with this bill that we've we're one of the early sponsors of and have been supporting for the last 3 years. And the whole time we were doing that, just to give you a little bit of background, we were looking for a cause that would go with this. That we have fees, they've been enacted across the country, and they've been very, very successful in change behavior. But in places like D.C., where they helped fund the Anacostia River Fund to clean up the river, it was hugely successful. And polls show where these bills pass, there is broad public support. There's griping at first, of course, but once they see the success of the program, the lack of plastic bags, and you can see this, on Maui and Kauai, public polls show that there's huge support. So we're saying take that money in the time being while we're changing that behavior and apply it to a good cause, and there can't be a better cause than funding the watershed. So, thank you.
Thank you. Sierra Club.
Thank you and aloha. My name is Robert Harris. I'm the director of the Sierra Club. I'll be brief, respecting the time you have. Obviously, there's clear environmental benefits to this proposal, but I'd like to briefly talk about the economic benefits. As you know, every single county has enacted a ban on plastic bags, moving consumers towards paper bags. Paper bags have an estimated cost of roughly 10 cents per bag, thus meaning we are increasing the cost to stores roughly 10 cents as they switch 10 times as much, 1 cent or less for plastic roughly to 10 cents for a paper bag. Stores are basically saying that have already made the switch. They're seeing increases sometimes up to $30,000 per store per month. And the gradual overall impact to the state can be somewhere, as every store switches, roughly about a $30 to $40 million increase. This increase will be essentially a tax on consumers that you'll never see because it'll go on to food and other items. So it'll be a hidden cost. The advantage of doing almost an offset fee, which this is it actually puts it up front, allows you to see it, and allows you to conscientiously make the decision to avoid it. So in some ways, what this bill does, it takes away a $30 to $40 million tax, allows us to put it in front, allows consumers to get around it, not actually have to pay this. So the advantage, too, obviously from the state's perspective, instead of having this money simply go towards paying for bags, is we can actually take this money and use it to fund something critically important, making sure our future keiki have drinking water. And that is really a critically important purpose.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Any other testifiers? Yes, please come up.
Hello, my name is Ken Sentner. I'm a member of the Surfrider Foundation. I'm testifying as an individual here. I live in Mo'ili'ili and Representative Nishimoto's district, and I'm very passionate for all the reasons that you've heard about the environment. And again, this may seem really obvious, but maybe sometimes the obvious thing needs to be said. Our environment is the quality of our environment is directly connected to 90% of our economy, which is tourism. People come here because this is a nice place and it's got natural beauty, and so it's in our obvious interest to protect it any way that we can, and this bill does that for the reasons that you've heard. We've been trying to pass legislation at the state level, Surfrider Foundation and other environmental groups, about single-use plastic bags for 4 years, I believe now. The counties, all 4 of them, as you know, have sort of leapfrogged over this issue. And so I would really urge the state legislature and this committee specifically to address an issue here. And you have this opportunity which kind of closes the loop that really is the frosting on the cake, just as you've heard the last 2 testifiers, of putting a fee on the paper bags, because that's something that we need to change folks' behavior, and paper bags are not without their environmental costs. So again, very briefly would urge you to really look at this, to take the lead on this, and to pass this bill for all of the reasons that you've heard. And I really hope that you'll take this opportunity again to show some leadership in the environmental community nationally, which will again make news, which will attract tourists that like the idea of coming to a place that does exhibit that kind of environmental leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nature Conservancy, Mr. Fox.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair and Vice Chairs, members of the committee. Mark Fox from the Nature Conservancy. Just 2 quick points. We too support this bill and echo all of the comments that have been made by the supporters. We too would note that paper bags are not without their problems. They are heavy resource users to produce and distribute and dispose of. They're heavy water users in their production. They're heavy fuel users in their distribution and storage, and they don't biodegrade. If you leave it out on the street, sure, it may biodegrade quite a lot faster than a plastic bag that just breaks up into tiny millions of little pieces. And they certainly will burn in H-Power, but if those things get in an anaerobic environment like our landfills, they don't break down well at all. The other thing I'd like to point out about the general fund, and I said this before this committee yesterday or the day before, I could not agree more. We should absolutely be dedicating an appropriate amount of general fund revenue to take care of our #1 asset in this state. For our tourism economy and every other aspect of our economy, it's the health and viability of our natural environment. And not because it's ecologically important or it's beautiful to look at, but because it allows us to live in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. There is very little rainfall in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The only reason we have a decent amount of rainfall in the Hawaiian Islands is because of the shape of the islands and because there's a good solid forest on the top of them. Warm water blows across the ocean, collects moisture, and it runs up against our high islands on the windward side. As that air rises off the ocean up the windward sides of the mountain, it cools, condenses, and produces rain and moisture that is captured by our forests. Those forests, and by the way, there's only about half of them left in the state of Hawaii. The other half was degraded, converted for agriculture, development, things that, again, support us, but we've got about half of it left, and that is the sponge that pulls that moisture off of the ocean and into our streams and aquifers for our use. It's actually pretty arid out here in the middle of the Pacific, and it's just the geographic shape of our islands that allows us to have water. But if we degrade that forest, if we degrade that environment, we're going to lose the very thing that allows us to survive. And climate change is causing a change there. The UH just put out its 2011 rainfall atlas, and it shows a 90 to 100-year declining trend in rainfall with a drastic increase in that decline over the last 2 decades. It's only going to get worse. Science is showing us that with climate change, we're probably going to have more severe and more frequent big storms, but again, overall less rainfall. So here you have a piece of legislation that is looking to address one problem and also help support another, taking care of our forests that provide us with that fluid that we need to live. As to the general fund, and I'll touch on that just briefly, I agree. We should be spending a very significant part of our general fund revenues on taking care of our environment. The reality is the DLNR's budget includes less than 1% of our general fund budget. It's been that way for decades. It hasn't changed. Less than 1% of our general fund budget gets spent on taking care of our environment and the programs of the Department of Land and Natural Resources. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Any other testifiers?
Good afternoon, aloha. Thank you for this opportunity, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. My name is Ari Pates. I'm a small business owner here. I own a company called Styrophobia. We're in strong support of this legislation. On my walk over here, I found this bag here floating around in the breeze, and I took the liberty of collecting all of these bags from across the street. This is not a huge walk that I took. I walked from Hotel Street over at Fort Street Mall to the Capitol, and all of these bags were actually just collected across the street, but I took photos using my handy dandy device here, and I wish I had a big tablet here for you, but I took pictures of over 80 bags. The interesting thing about Fort Street Mall is there's a trash can about every 50 or 80 feet, and yet I have trash bags stuck in gutters. And there's a little label on a lot of these gutters that say it goes straight out into our oceans. This is a win-win situation. It provides funds to take care of some of these issues while addressing a behavior that we have gotten into that has grossly allowed us to take advantage of our environment. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Please proceed to the table.
Good afternoon. My name is John Lyon. I'm a teacher at Farrington, and I'm currently teaching a class on environmental science. And I stress that we need to reverse a mentality of consumability or consumerism if we're to survive much longer, economically and otherwise. The Hawaiians came to the islands because of the high mountains that caused abundant freshwater supply. And we're seeing the water supply decline, so that issue is pretty well addressed already. But I'd like to emphasize, by forcing everyone that goes to the store to think for a second, do I need a bag? Am I going to buy it, or am I going to bring it? You make it a personal, local choice. You want to think global, you better start local. So that forces it to be a local choice, a personal choice. And what better example to show for the next generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The gentleman in the back wanted to testify.
Good afternoon. My name is my name is James Macy, and I want to oppose this bill. I hear this. It's not a tax. It's a fee. You're going to change behavior, and it sounds pretty scary to me. If it's a tax or a fee, it's still taking money from people that doesn't need to be. I grew up with paper bags, when I was younger, and we put them in the trash can and throw them in the, fill them up with trash and then throw them in a trash can outside. Same thing with paper. When the plastic bags come along, I didn't go and say, hey, I want a plastic bag. Let's invent a plastic bag. And why are you going to penalize me with this crazy tax? I'd be happy to go back to paper bags, whatever. Don't tax me. Tax the people who make the bags or the grocery stores. It's not my problem. I don't go and say, I got to have a plastic bag, so tax me. Change my behavior. Change the behavior of the stores or the people who make them. Come on, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other testifiers? Yes.
My name is Mark Ferguson. I'm the CEO of Down to Earth Natural Foods. We have 5 stores in Hawaii. While the retail industry has mixed feelings on this bill due to the reporting costs and the administrative costs and the additional costs for our customers, we support this bill. We believe the only way consumer behavior will change is if there is a cost attached to using a single-use bag. As one of the testifiers said, the ban on plastic caused a switch to paper. In our store on Maui, it went from our biodegradable plastic bags to paper bags that increase our costs for bags, almost tenfold. Paper bags are a lot more expensive. They cause a lot of problems. There's a lot of shipping costs getting them here. They're very heavy, and so on. In their production, they use a lot of water, as one of the testifiers said. They also cause a lot of water pollution, a lot of air pollution. It's a very dirty industry making paper bags. A lot of trees are used. So in short, paper bags are no better for the environment than plastic bags. There needs to be an incentive to consumers to stop using single-use bags. There's plenty of multiple-use bags available now. I think using the majority of the fees raised for the environment, that's a great idea. That's something innovative. That's good. One amendment I'd suggest is the effective date for the bill needs to be moved to January 1st, 2015. Currently it's July 1 this year. To set up the computer systems and manage this change takes time. It can't be done in just a couple months. Thank you.
Thank you. Wanted to testify?
Aloha, Chairperson Luke and all the Finance Committee members. My name is Dr. Melissa Yee, and I was here to testify for another bill. But in hearing about this bill, I expressed my concern that, yes, indeed, there will be a cost, but unless you also have an educational program to inform people why they need to make the switch, people are going to be very reluctant to do it. I lived in Europe for about 20 years. And I moved there in the 1970s, and already then we were using canvas bags. We paid for our plastic bags. If we used paper bags, we also paid for them. They were a little bit less expensive than the plastic. But already back then in the 1970s, people were taking responsibility for going grocery shopping. And I see here in Hawaii that it's such a beautiful place that people are expecting somebody else to pay for it. And therefore, I really stress that unless you implement that educational process with these, with the stores, with the retailers, with the customers, the shift is going to be very difficult to make. So I just wanted to emphasize that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other testifiers? Yes, please.
My name is Winnie He, and I submitted written testimony. I just want to make one quick point. We do need this bill to change people's behavior and make them remember to bring their own bags. And we don't need plastic because look at all the consumers who shop at Costco and Sam's Club. There are no plastic bags.
Thank you. Any other testifiers? Yes.
Aloha mai kako, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Nishimoto, and members of the Finance Committee. My name is Juanita Kawamoto, and I am here as an individual Native Hawaiian citizen advocate, but I also participate with the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. And our committee and our group do support this bill. We do believe, and I do believe, that we have the ability to take our aina back to where it's aloha aina again. And we do have the finances here that can be used to assist in this type of process. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Any other testifiers? If not, questions, members? Representative Lowen.
I guess Sierra Club. Can you just explain the environmental impacts of paper bags? Because essentially, as the testifier from Surfrider pointed out, we're talking about closing a loophole since all the counties have passed bans on plastic, even though they might not be implemented right away.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, obviously, paper bags have a tremendous water cost. They do usually result in trees being cut down, although some of them are made out of recycled material. Usually, since they're so much larger in volume and heavier, usually there's quite a great deal of shipping costs, and so the carbon footprint of paper bags is considered quite high. And then obviously in the disposal of these items on Oahu, a certain large stream of them are going to go to H-Power, but on the neighbor islands, they do tend to be much larger, bulkier, and although, you know, one bag, what's the big deal? The average consumer uses about 400 of them, so you multiply that against every single person on the neighbor islands, it's actually a great deal of waste stream that goes into landfills where it doesn't biodegrade, as Mr. Fox pointed out earlier. They typically get buried where there is no oxygen and essentially just stay there.
Mm-hmm. And then the cost of shipping them here, I would imagine, is greater than plastic bags just because they're so much heavier.
Yes, and that is a part of, you know, as we referenced earlier, the cost of paper bags is roughly 10 cents higher, roughly 10 cents, and that's a hard number to quantify because a larger stores can buy in bigger bulk and, you know, get greater deals, so it's hard to say the specificity, but the average seems to be about a little less than 1 penny for plastic and about 10 cents for paper, and a lot of that is the cost of shipping, the cost of goods, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. And then I appreciated your talking about the economic impacts because I think with the shift from plastic to paper, if that were to occur, that actually will be detrimental to the consumer. And I'm wondering if you have thoughts on that.
You know, this is sort of economics and social psychology merged into one. When you give away something for free, there is a a desire to just keep using it. So we found in some cities, for example, where you gave away water for free, where people just use it. You found people using water for everything. You know, they'd even use it to cool off the rooftops. They just keep using it. And as soon as you put a cost on the item, the real cost, hopefully, all of a sudden there's a forced desire to reduce and reduce it down. So here, the idea of adding the fee, and really it is the true cost of the paper bag, showing that people can then make that intelligent decision. And it's funny, a little fee does have a tremendous benefit in adjusting behavior. We saw with the bottle law, for example, when we added the 5 cents and allowed people to redeem that, we went from roughly 18% recycling rate in 1 month. We saw a transformation to 70% recycling and a little bit below 80% where we are today. So, I mean, if you can think of, how often have you seen that great of a social change? It's really directly related to influencing that behavior. And we have examples. I mean, Washington, D.C. has seen, as soon as they did the 5 cents, within just a very short period of time, they've seen roughly a 70% reduction in the amount of bags. We have somebody visiting from California right now where they've enacted something similar, and they'd say, geez, I always forgot to bring my reusable bags, but as soon as that fee went in, man, I remember now. It's funny, 5 cents really, or 10 cents, what's the big deal? But it is powerfully motivating on a social psychology basis. We just don't want to pay that. Washington, D.C. had a very funny story about people carrying out $100 bottles of wine in their hands because they didn't want to pay the 10 cents for a bag, right? Okay, but again, it's achieving a good result that benefits the stores, it benefits the consumers, and to the extent that the funding that's derived is used for a good purpose, there's sort of a win-win-win there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Morikawa.
Question for Department of Health. Looking at your testimony, I noticed that it's going to cost you guys up to $1.5 million in operating costs. Is that correct?
That is in our testimony. We're estimating $800,000 for 5 additional staff and the contracted services that you see in our testimony. If perchance all the social psychology doesn't work, and the amount of bags are not reduced, we estimate that those costs could go up over time, but minimally we need $800,000 to staff and run the program and collect the fees.
So if you do get authorization to fund positions or get the positions, would these be temporary as needed, or would they have to be funded for ever?
Well, there's no such thing as funding positions forever in this environment, as you well know.
If you make it a civil service position, then you face furloughs or layoffs.
Well, we're now reeling from the not-so-forever positions that were cut in the past economic times. So, the reality is that if for whatever reason this program goes away, then these positions would go away with time as well. I can't speak, I'd have to get back to you in terms of a phased-in plan of how we would hire over time, but I would suspect that these are going to be standard civil service positions if they are created in the budget. That we can't create the positions. The legislature would have to appropriate the funds and allow those positions to be created in the budget.
Do you know how much anticipated revenue is going to come in on this initiative?
I think probably DLNR would be better to answer that question. We've been focusing on the amount of revenue that we need to operate our responsibilities under this law. But the total amount, there have been various estimates, and I don't have that in my head.
Can I?
15 million is the estimate that I've heard from the department.
That's just the state's portion.
No, I think that's the total revenue.
Okay, so of that, what is it, 2% will go back to the business?
There have been various versions
See a lot of
before the legislature. Maybe somebody else want to answer that question.
The first year, 20% goes to retailers. The second year, 10% goes to retailers.
Indefinitely.
That doesn't go back.
So ultimately, I guess Department of Health is this going to be something that you're going to have to come back to us for funding for personnel?
I don't think so. I mean, assuming the bill passes in the version that authorizes the funds that we need to operate it, then then we should be okay. How the legislature wishes to allocate the funds above and beyond what we need to operate the program is a matter of public policy that we defer to the wisdom of the legislature in that regard.
Thank you. Thank you. Representative Johansson.
Thank you. Can I have the Sierra Club? Thank you, Mr. Harris. And I'll preface my question with the knowledge that under this law and this potential law change and Washington, D.C. is that it's an optional fee. One can choose to opt out if you change your behavior. I appreciated you bringing up the example with some empirical evidence of Washington, D.C.'s experiment with this. And I was wondering if you might be able to elaborate, given the wide socioeconomic strata that exists within the District of Columbia, if you knew from looking at that example what the potential impacts were to all segments of society there, particularly with respect to cost of living or just because there's such a varied socioeconomic strata there.
Yeah, and I apologize. All I have to go off of is the reports that have come out, and I'm not sure I've seen anything that's actually analyzed that issue. But if I could redirect the question briefly about how it apply here in Hawaii, I've heard, I guess, 3 potential good answers. One of the proposals has been, and there's been various forms of this in the legislation that's moved forward, is either to allow anybody who's on EBT or sort of the equivalent to be able to be exempt from the fee concept. The other option would be is to actually give away a certain number of reusable bags. The idea is that once people have reusable, it should cross social economic lines. There's no reason why somebody who is not as much of means couldn't use a reusable bag. And the third thing I think is important, I think it's a good question to direct towards the retailers, is some of the retailers previously have made the commitment that they'd give away a very large number of free reusable bags because they had a direct incentive to want to see this program succeed. So, for example, in past, Walmart's given away 1 million free reusable bags. Last year, Safeway and Times both made a public commitment that they do, maybe not to that scale, but large giveaways. So the idea means I think there are ways to resolve any types of perceived concern about how it impact different classes of our society to try and resolve it and make it work.
And I do appreciate that in successive iterations of this bill, it's tried to accommodate those who probably can least afford to absorb cost increases. So I do appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Hashem.
Since there's no tax expert, local APA?
He is a tax expert.
I was thinking no. I was going to say, I meant the Department of Tax, I should say. But Mr. Kalafta, you would answer this very well. Sorry. Our tax expert here. I have a problem with giving the companies a portion of the fee or tax, however you would say it. Do we do this for any other tax that we have? Because it costs money? We just passed another bill that moved the date of paying their GET from the middle of the month to the end of the month. To reprogram their computers, it costs money to do that also. Is this good tax policy to be doing this, or do we do this for any other fee or tax that we impose onto?
To do this would be inconsistent. The state of Hawaii just takes it. Now, in the case where you have states that have a retail sales tax, because the incidence of tax falls on the consumer and not the business, businesses in some of those states are rewarded for being the tax collector. This is something I think maybe this proposal is patterned after, admitting that we are imposing an additional cost on businesses as a result of having to collect this fee for which they get no benefit. I do want to, can I be selfish for just a second?
Sure.
Does this mean that my nickel from Foodland when I use my reusable bag will disappear? Does this mean that my dollar for every return of my reusable bag at CVS Longs will go away? I really enjoy that, getting that dollar back. There are incentives that businesses already provide. Time, space, you need 3 cents. My question is, first of all, I think Representative Morikawa points out a very important point. Are we creating yet another public bureaucracy to run a program that is designed to fail? And if it is successful by failing, are we stuck with 5 employees forever and ever, and they become a part of the unfunded liability? So be careful what you do, because we are creating something that becomes nothing more than an anticipated money machine. And in fact, if indeed this was such a high priority as far as our community is concerned, then certainly it would have earned the top spot in our general fund appropriations.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Representative Kobayashi, followed by Representative Ward.
I'm wondering if anyone is here from Food Industry Association. In your testimony, you're talking about, of course, the cost of the high cost of paper bags, and you cite in a underlined section that if we wanted to save, we wanted to decrease our, if we did not want our food costs to go up, this bill should be amended. What amendments are you talking about?
Well, essentially our main point, and Sierra Club has talked a lot about this, is that essentially part of this bill is it's supposed to offset the increase in groceries that we are going to see because of the $30,000 to $60,000 per store increase in costs we've seen because of the mandate that all stores carry paper bags. And in order for this to actually be considered an offset, we think that like larger than 10% of the fee would have to go back to the store in order to cover the increased cost that they are paying per bag, which is about 10 cents, as has already been talked about.
So, I'm sorry, what is the amendment?
So the amendment would basically be that more of the money would have to go back to the consumers in the store in order for that money to be saved, so that the price of the goods could go down to the level that they were at before the retailers had to pay 10
So
cents.
what's the number?
I mean, it really varies depending on which retailer you talk to.
No, we
As-
we don't do that, you know.
Yeah, as
If you don't have a number, you don't have a number.
As I talked about in the testimony, in California, actually all of the money goes back to the consumers in the store. So the entire amount of the fee is maintained within the system and given back to the consumer in the form of lower food costs. So that would obviously be our ideal situation.
So your amendment would be that 10 cents go back to the consumer in the store.
Right.
Divided how?
That it would just be kept within that system of the retailer. So the money that we would be, paying for the paper bag would be given back to the consumer and the retailer.
No.
Right? We'd be collecting
Wait.
the money per...
Consumer is one person.
Right. Right,
Retailer
so
is another
the retailer,
person?
assuming because of the very competitive market for food is the most competitive market, that would be basically passed on to the consumer in the form of lower food costs, just like we're saying the increase in cost is being passed on to the consumer, right, through the cost of goods.
So you're saying that if 10 cents is charged per paper bag, then 10 cents goes back to the retailer. Consumer gets...
And then the consumer will not see the increase in cost
Right.
as a result of the increases, yes.
Okay, Representative Ward.
Thank you, Chair. The Sierra Club and the Department of Health, if I may ask you two gentlemen to come up. The first question I have is the metrics. I've complained twice there's no metrics in some of these bills. We don't know whether we're winning, losing, doing well, doing poorly. But in this bill, there's a metric, and it's on the 7th page at the bottom, and it says, if after July 2016 the department determines that for statewide distribution a single checkout bag has not decreased by 75%, automatically the charge goes from 10 cents to 25 cents. So if it's built to fail, it succeeds by getting you guys more money. If it does fail, if you don't get 75%, they get 25 cents or whatever the percentage of the 25 cents is. My question to the Sierra Club initially is, did Washington, D.C., in their success story, get 75% decrease in their bags in 2 years, which this bag is setting a metric for?
I can only report back what happened after a 6-month period, which was a 5-cent fee. They saw a 70% reduction. So it's worth doing research to find out where they are currently, and I apologize, I don't have the answer offhand. But one could presume that 10 cents would have a similar or better result, and so 75% seems like a likely scenario.
It's extrapolatable, I guess you would say, if there's such a word. And Mr. Gill.
Representative, I don't think the bill establishes any additional money coming to the Department of Health to operate this fund if the 75-cent reduction fails to take place. The Department of Health is in here because we have the expertise to run these kinds of programs. We currently run them. We know how to run them, and we would provide the service to the state of Hawaii to collect the fees and to distribute the funds, in this case, the lion's share of them going to the watersheds.
So if it went from $15 million to $35
we still need our $800,000.
We need new employees or anything.
Well, our projections don't show that we would need,
The other side of that coin is, if it really succeeds, is there a withering away of the state, if I may use the term that Marx used? Is there, nobody uses plastic anymore, so you guys don't get any money, and I think the local upper question comes, what happens to the mechanism by which we've generated here? Well, in other words, project that we get 100%, no more bags, no plastic, no more fees. What do we do?
Well, this legislature has actively engaged in the withering away of the state, if you will, Representative. There's no such thing as a program that lasts forever. I served, yes, I'm quite positive, and I'll give you a number of examples, because 10 years ago I worked in this job under a previous administration, and now I'm working under the same job, and programs that I used to administer are now no more. They are gone. Okay? This legislature, working with the administration, did away with them. And this is a decision that this legislature makes every year. What do you fund and what do you not fund? This is what you're elected to do. That's what this committee is considering. So to blame the state for never withering away is to blame ourselves in this democratic process.
Correct myself. Withering away of a tax that we impose or a fee, we generally don't back out on this. We have a number of bills that like that. But
I understood, but that
okay, so I think
question,
that's kind of like it's a personal discussion you guys can have and decide whether you guys disagree or agree on withering of the state economy. So please proceed with your questioning.
My last question is a throwaway question to both of you. On page 6, it exempts...
We'll recycle it.
Yeah. At the next finance meeting. Why are door hanger bags exempt? Was that a fish to the politicians who go door to door?
We wouldn't want to get in the way of real democracy.
Door hangers exempt.
This bill's a result of a lot of working with different people and compromising and trying to get something that makes as many people as possible happy. So, you have the result, which, we think is the most productive and useful thing. And briefly, to answer the 99% reduction, that would be a positive thing, right? That's a good problem to have. And, the real concern would potentially be is the funding for the watershed program. That at that point we'd probably have to re-examine it, find new funding to ensure that we're doing those things that we think are good state priorities. But again, hopefully that's a good problem to have in the future.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you. Representative Morikawa.
One more question to the stores, grocery store representative. In all of this, the stores would be collecting the fee. Couldn't the stores just write a check to DLNR for the initiative?
That would be maybe simpler.
Thank you.
Can I see the list for Monday?
Okay.
Oh, sorry, sorry, Representative Lowen.
Okay, retail merchants, please. Or the stores? Food, okay. So I'm trying to understand this, though, from your perspective. I'm not really clear. The counties impose, well, it's not all in effect yet, but the counties have banned plastic. So now you're choosing to provide paper at an increased cost. This isn't the state's doing, even not that we haven't tried, but the store could choose not to provide those paper bags if they wanted. Is that correct?
Right. I mean, they could provide nothing.
Mm-hmm. So by charging the ban on plastic going into effect, the store's cost in providing paper has actually, the cost in providing bags has increased for the stores.
Right.
But that's not the doing of the state. I mean, that's because of the county ban on plastic.
Right,
so if nothing were done, if the state doesn't pass this bill that we're looking at right now, what will be the effect to stores?
It would be the increase in, like that we talked about, that we're seeing $30,000 to $60,000 per store.
Okay, and if this bill did pass, and I think right now it's at 20% goes to the stores for the first 2 years, and then 10% thereafter, would that be a less cost to who you represent in comparison to us having passed nothing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would just depend on the effect that we would see, which we don't really know at this point what the reduction would be in the usage.
So does the amount of the reduction in usage how does that affect you?
I would suppose that would reduce the amount of bags they would ultimately buy. Right. But yeah, I mean, when you look at it from buying in bulk perspective too, then there is still sort of an increase in cost if you have to buy less, and I don't know what it actually works out to. I can't speak to that.
Okay. And so the conversation you had where you said to cover your costs you would need 10 cents, the full 10 cents back from the 10-cent fee that this bill is talking about imposing. I wasn't quite clear on how, if this bill passes, it actually assists the stores financially. As far as I can tell, then why you would need that full 10 cents?
I think we were mostly just pointing out a model of California, what the state of California has done in numerous different counties, and that's the model that they've used, which we think is a little bit more effective than having a fee and all of these different accounting systems and having it be assessed to the GET and having to track it and all these other things which are costly and do increase our cost of labor. And we're not really sure how much of that is going to eat up almost entirely, we're assuming, or more than that, the amount that we're going to be seeing back from it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Any other questions?
Can I do one more? I'm sorry. Sorry, you looked like you wanted to add something.
Speak into the mic.
Come forward and hopefully.
Sorry. Stuart Coleman again from the Surfrider Foundation. Thank you. California does not have a uniform policy about giving all the money to the stores because there are counties across California that have very, very different policies. And from what I understand, it's a minority that do give it all back. Most do not. So just as a point of clarification.
Thanks. Thank you.
Representative Yamashita.
Thank you, Chair. Is Dylan R here? Department? Yeah. Thank you. Quick question. I've seen some of the watershed projects, and I think you're doing good work with those things, and I think it's an important endeavor. But I was just wondering if, as far as source of funding, because I think that's what this bill is all about. Has the department ever looked at, because in essence, you're protecting the watershed to have, in-stream flow, groundwater for future use and those types of things, right? So, and I'm just thinking it from a nexus perspective. Have you ever looked at maybe a fee that would be charging the user? And
at the county level, Representative?
Yeah.
That actually has been contemplated, and in a previous hearing, some members of the House had raised that issue. That is something that we are going to, in the long term, have discussions with all of the various counties. But given all of the stakeholder meetings that we have held, we have identified that this source of funding, as well as the conveyance tax, is probably the most feasible at this point in time. Right now, many water users are taxed for various reasons depending on the county, and as a result, we do not believe it is politically feasible to move forward on that front until there's probably a lowering of costs for the users.
There is many different approaches to, and we can look at it from many different perspectives. Because we are providing water for the future and things like that. The one mechanism is not necessarily charging out of the water fee, but charging it through property tax. And the reason why I bring up property tax is because because our state is so centralized, and many of our services are done at the state level. Property tax is fairly low compared to the mainland, and property tax is deductible on your federal income tax. And because some of these services that we provide for at the state level are not in the property tax, our state loses out on federal deductions, which is a reduction of federal money into our state. So there is an avenue, other avenues of getting monies into our state. And I just think we just need to be a little more creative and think about it from a holistic perspective.
I concur. I don't believe anything would be off the table. Our conveyance tax proposal is actually a similar thought.
And the conveyance tax, I disagree with that because that's kind of a front end. And I understand you were trying to target like the high end homes and things like that. But when you put fees on the front end, you actually add to the cost of homes, which actually price some of our young people out of affordable homes. And it's smarter to do a fee on property tax because you tax them on the back end.
Well, we'll certainly consider that, Representative, as these bills move forward. On the conveyance tax front, because our initiative is a 10-year project, we would have had a sunset. We would have been open to a 10-year sunset.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, let's move on to the last bill.